Hello guys, my name is Shrish. So a couple of months back I had uploaded a video where I basically showcased the low light abilities of the Poco X2's camera. I shot a lot of light trail shots, I shot a lot of nightscapes, I shot a couple of astrophotographs as well. And there were a bunch of photos that I clicked solely in the low light. And these images were entirely shot in manual mode, like obviously. So yeah, some of you guys wanted a tutorial on that, and this is exactly that. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into this. Now a quick side note, because the lockdown hasn't really ended yet, so I cannot go out on streets and capture those light trails with the help of some bikes and cars or the traffic basically. So yeah, I'll have to shoot all of this in this particular room, or the farthest I can go is the terrace. So yeah, I won't be exactly able to replicate those images which I had shot in my previous video, but I will tell you the exact settings that I had used, and I'll also explain these settings so that you can get really creative, and in the end you can probably capture images that are even better than me. Now before getting directly into the camera settings, let's just kind of clear up the basics about these camera settings. So first one is focus. So basically focus is pretty self-explanatory. You'll have to set the focus according to your subject. If you're shooting without a subject and if you want everything in focus, then you'll have to set the focus to 100 or infinity, and you can adjust likewise based on your subject or based on the bokeh that you want to achieve. And the second one, which is pretty much important, is the shutter speed. Now whenever you click a picture from a smartphone or a camera or a DSLR, what happens is basically your camera lens's shutter opens up, captures the light, and it closes and clicks the picture. If this particular shutter is open for too long, it will capture a lot of light. On the other hand, if the shutter is pretty much fast, like it opens up and closes really fast, so in that case the camera won't be able to capture a lot of noise. Now the shutter speed here exactly controls that. If you set the shutter speed too slow, let's say 1 second, 2 second, 4 second, or 16 seconds or 8 seconds, so in that case your camera will be able to capture a lot of noise, and that will result in a much brighter image. On the other hand, if you have set a very high shutter speed, so in that case your camera won't be able to capture a lot of noise. Now the downside with slower shutter speed is that it results in blurry images if you are shooting or if you're capturing handheld. So in that case, if you want to set your shutter speed too slow, then a tripod is something I would definitely recommend. In fact, 99% of the times, the slower shutter speed or night images that you see from professional photographers as well, they are captured using a tripod. Next up we have ISO. Now ISO will basically add artificial light to your image. Now the artificial light is obviously not natural, which means that when you add all of this artificial light via ISO, it will add a lot of noise in the image as well. And in most cases you don't really like noisy images. So in that case, I do definitely recommend keeping your ISO to its minimum. In most phones it's 100. In cameras you can go a little bit below that if you have some sort of specific camera. But yeah, that's about that. So there is just one thing that you need to keep in mind: lower the ISO, better the image, or lower the noise, and higher the ISO, more the noise, which most people don't like. So guys, firstly head over to the pro mode or manual mode to click this type of pictures. So firstly, this is the pro mode of my phone, and these are the different settings. White balance, or WB stands for white balance. F stands for focus, S for shutter speed, ISO for ISO, and EV for exposure compensation. Now firstly, let's reduce the shutter speed. Let's just make it a little bit longer. So I think 4 seconds looks good. But now again we'll have to drop down the ISO to 100. Now just as I said, ISO at 100 will make the image look a lot more noise free, so we don't really want a lot of noise. So that is the reason I'm setting the ISO to 100, which is the minimum over here. But when we set the ISO to 100, the image will become fairly less exposed. So now we should actually increase the shutter speed, and that's what we are going to do. So as I told you, the image becomes less exposed. So I'll increase the shutter speed to 16 seconds, and now setting up the focus, I'll set it to 100 and click the image. Now focus at hundreds, or for F at 100 means that everything is in focus over here. So the image will take 16 seconds to click because the shutter speed has been set to 16 seconds or 16s. So let's wait for 16 seconds and then you will have your image. So now looking at the image is okayish, but it doesn't really have a lot of light and it doesn't look anything extraordinary. But because the ISO was set to 100, we have very less noise. But I think we can go a little bit higher to just expose the image a little bit better. So I'll just bump up the ISO a little bit around 400, and the shutter speed will remain same at 16 seconds. And again I'll click the same image, and again it will take 16 seconds to click the image. And now here we have it. The image has a lot more light than before, and it looks pretty much very better. Now if you look for the noise levels or the noise in the image, there isn't a lot of noise over here, especially because the sensor on the Poco X2 is fairly good. So it totally depends on the device that you're using. The different devices have different low light capabilities, so that totally depends on the phone you're using, or the result depends on the phone you're using. Now this is the next image that we are going to look at. So this is a bokeh image of some sort of lights. There is a fairy light, there is some sort of CPU light as well. And this is another image which I didn't capture. It was from a professional photographer. I just found it on Pixels. Again, this image as well. Now to capture these type of bokeh images, it's all about focus. So we'll just have to mess around with focus, and that's about it. There's not much to do. Now before getting into it, I will just mess around with the exposure compensation, or EV over here. So EV is basically, just as the name states, exposure compensation. If an image is totally overexposed, it will, help you drop down the exposure level. It kind of acts like an ND filter. After that is done, I'll just head over to F, or focus, and I will just mess around with the focus. Now F at 100 means everything is in focus, and F below 10 means nothing is in focus. So these are basically the focal lengths. So yeah, once that is done, once you see your image is bokeh, just go and set your shutter speed and your ISO according to your will. Again, ISO I'll set it to 100 because I like noise-free images. I mean, who doesn't? So yeah, but now the image looks a little bit underexposed. So again, I will increase the shutter speed. So overall, it's a game of ISO and shutter speeds for the most part when it comes to low light photography. So if you are familiar or habitual with these two settings, then you are pretty much very good to go with low light photography. So I'll set the shutter speed to 1/38 of a second, and yeah, there we have the image. And overall, it looks decent. It's not really anything extraordinary because we didn't have a lot of lightings and stuff going on in the actual scenario. But yeah, once the lockdown is lifted, you can get real creative with this stuff. Now let's try to capture these light trail shots, or light paintings as people like to call them. So firstly, I'll set the eye set to minimum. Now over here the scenario is pretty much overexposed, and this is not the ideal scenario to capture light painting. I'll set the shutter speed to 8 seconds, and once you click the shutter button, you just have to go in front of the camera practically. Take your light source, it may be a torch or any light source, and draw whatever the hell you want to draw, and that will give you a light painting. Now you can get real creative with this. You see a lot of these light trail pictures where on roads there is a lot of traffic or cars going on, and you see those light trails and light painting sort of thing. So that's basically done with this exact same method. Now over here it was just me drawing, and a torch was my light source. But when you go out on streets, you might have cars as your light sources. So that will get you a better image, just like this. This was the one I captured before the lockdown, and again this one as well. You see those light trails, these are basically the headlights of the cars that I saw at that particular moment, and that's how you generally do it. So yeah guys, that was it for this particular video. I know that this tutorial wasn't super advanced, but that was the aim behind this. I wanted to make this as basic as I could. But yeah, if you just understood the basic settings that I spoke about throughout the video, then you're pretty much good to go and try around the advanced stuff as well. There are pretty much a lot of tutorials on this. This was just my share of it, and I hope this video helped you in some way or the other. If it did, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.